Welcome, brave listener. The shadows around you, carefully crafted to cradle your fears, for tales that linger beyond tonight's horrors. Join us on Patreon. Settle in. Let your mind wander. But stay wary. The truest terrors aren't in these words. They are in the dark corners you'll conjure. Breathe deep. Let's begin. Story 1. The ice screamed. Claire Mercer felt it in her molars first. A high-pitched vibration skittering across dental nerves as she knelt in the snow. Her Team S ground-penetrating radar had shown the anomaly 3 days ago. A perfect geometric pattern buried beneath 200 meters of Antarctic ice, its angles adhering to no known human mathematics. Now, with the drill heads smoking and sparking in the 58 wind, she watched ancient blue ice crack open like a frosted windshield. Jesus, whispered Elias Kim, their structural geologist. His breath crystallized midair, catching the glare of their floodlights. Those planes, they shouldn't intersect like that. The excavation revealed a spiraling cavity. Its walls shimmered with fractal patterns that made Claire's migraine pulse in time with the auroras writhing overhead. She suffered the headaches since childhood. Since the night she sleepwalked into a Nebraska cornfield and returned with her pajamas caked in black sap that dissolved under tap water. The doctors called it night terrors. Her Lutheran mother hung garlic over every window, like a nautilus shell, said Dr. Varma, their astrophysicist, adjusting her fogged goggles, except each chamber shrinks exponentially toward the center. A Klein bottle in 3 dimensions. Claire's gloves squeaked against the ice axe. They'd all seen the satellite images, the 6-pointed symmetry of this structure, matching identical formations, buried under Mars' Cydonia region and Europa's frozen crust. The United Nations had hushed it up, funded this rushed expedition, sent them to this God-forsaken white expanse, where the sun hadn't risen since February. The first corpse emerged at 3:47 station time. Elias was chipping at an ice inclusion when his pick struck something pale and fibrous. They thawed the specimen with shaky hands, revealing a creature resembling a giant horseshoe crab fused with a jellyfish. Translucent tendrils branched from its carapace, each tip terminating in a human molar. Carbon dating puts it at 280 million years. Dr. Pharma murmured later in the lab, her voice hollow. Predates the Permian extinction by 30 million years. Claire's migraines spiked as she studied the thing under UV light. The teeth fluoresced. Her own fillings throbbed. When she closed her eyes, after images resolved into a flickering sequence. towering black obelisks under a green sky. Something vast and segmented unspooling through clouds like a tapeworm through viscera. They found the chamber on the 7th day. The fractal corridor terminated in a hexagonal vault. Its walls pulsed with bioluminescent veins that reacted to their movements, retreating from Elias' touch, swarming toward Claire S. left temple, where her migraine burned hottest. Doctor. Varma S. radiation badge chirped an alarm. Cherenkov radiation, she said, staring at the dosimeter. But there S, no reactor here, no fissile material. Claire pressed her palm against the living wall. Cold seeped through her glove. The veins constricted, forming a map of constellations. She'd never seen stars arranged in spirals that hurt to perceive, like staring at a tesseract through a kaleidoscope. It's a prison, she heard herself say. Elias laughed a shrill, unfamiliar sound. For what? King fucking Ghidorah. The walls answered. A low-frequency hum vibrated the ice beneath their boots. Claire's vision doubled. She saw the vault as it was now, and as it had been eons ago, filled with viscous fluid that refracted light into impossible colors. The chamber not empty, but occupied by something that existed in more dimensions than her mind could process. The migraine detonated behind her eyes when she woke in the medical pod. Dr. Varma was screaming into a dead satellite phone. Elias is gone, the astrophysicist hissed. Her left pupil dilated to a black moon. He kept saying the walls were breathing. Went back down alone. The security feed, you need to see the footage, showed Elias stumbling through the vault. His parka discarded. Frostbite blistered his lips. He used a rock to chip one of his molars out. The bloody tooth clutched like a talisman. As he pressed it to the glowing wall, the chamber flexed. A shadow moved through the ice like a shark under frozen waves. Then Elias began to unfold. His body distended, joints bending in directions evolution never intended. Ribs burst through skin, forming a chitinous cage around his still-beating heart. Claire watched, nausea rising. As his scream Doppler shifted into ultrasonic registers, the last frame showed his remains, a twisted sculpture of bone and frozen viscera, arranged in a perfect Fibonacci sequence. We need to collapse the shaft, Dr. Varma said. Now. But the ice had other plans. By midnight, the entire camp sat atop a glowing web of fissures. The auroras churned violently overhead, their colors shifting toward ultraviolet. Claire's migraine had localized behind her left eye, a throbbing presence with its own rhythm. When she looked in the mirror, her sclera swam with fractal patterns. Dr. Varma found her vomiting black sludge into a snowbank. It's in the water, the astrophysicist said, holding up a petri dish. Their melted ice samples squirmed with translucent nematodes. The structure at S, not a building. It's a egg. Claire's vision split again. She saw the Antarctic ice sheet as it truly was paper-thin crust over a bubbling ocean of primordial slime. The Vault S occupant, suspended in quantum superposition, neither alive nor dead, but waiting for the stars to align, for the screaming ice to finally crack. The Permian extinction, Dr. Varma continued, her voice accelerating into panic. 95% of marine species wiped out. We always thought it was volcanoes, but it was a hatching. Claire finished. The ground heaved. They ran through howling winds as the ice sheet disintegrated beneath them. Claire's migraine crested a white-hot spike, drilling through her skull. She realized with dreamlike clarity that the pain wasn't hers. It never had been. The thing in the vault was dreaming, and she was its conduit. Dr. Varma, didn't he scream when the fissure swallowed her? One moment, she was sprinting toward the emergency hovercraft. The next, she simply inverted her body, collapsing into a singularity that emitted a single pure note before winking out. The ice around the anomaly fluoresced, revealing endless tunnels writhing with tooth-studded tendrils. Claire reached the hovercraft as the vault breached. What emerged defied description, a shimmering discontinuity that refracted reality like a corrupted prism. It wasn't a creature, wasn't a machine. It was the absence between notes in a cosmic scale, the negative space around existence. The hovercraft's windshield cracked as Claire's mind tried to parse the impossible angles. Blood trickled from her ears. She understood now. The migraines, the night terrors, the black sap. She'd always been a receiver. Her neural architecture, uniquely tuned to frequencies older than multicellular life. The Vault's occupant had been whispering to her since childhood, using her dreams to map human cognition, to learn how to unmake it. The hovercraft's engine roared to life. Claire spun the wheel toward McMurdo Station, toward warmth and light and humanity. Behind her, the anomaly unfolded a fractal bloom of non-Euclidean geometry that tore the auroras into bleeding streamers. Her radio crackled with panicked voices from research stations across Antarctica, then silence when the rescue plane found her 3 days later, adrift on a shrinking ice floe. Claire couldn't explain how she survived. The psych eval noted extreme dissociation and persistent hallucinations. They didn't believe her about the teeth growing under her gums, the ones that matched no known hominid species. back in Rhode Island, autumn leaves fell through air thick with unspoken dread. Claire spent hours staring at the Charles River, its polluted surface reflecting a sky that seemed subtly wrong stars peering through the smog, in configurations that made dogs howl and newborns refuse to nurse. At night, she dreams of the vault, of something stirring in the dark between galaxies, of countless other eggs buried in dead worlds, and worst of all, the terrible, comforting knowledge that when the hatching comes, humanity's extinction will be a footnote, a momentary flicker in an endless cosmic cycle. The ice is screaming again. She hears it in her teeth. Story 2. The trees swallowed the road a mile back. Now there was only the path, narrow as a rabbit's spine, winding between pines that leaned together like old women sharing secrets. Alara's boots sank into the moss-choked earth with wet, sucking sounds. Behind her, 6-year-old Lily hummed a made-up tune, oblivious to the way the afternoon light turned the color of spoiled milk where it pierced the canopy. Almost there, Alara lied. Her grandmother's village. Hadn't he appeared on any map since the 1923 survey? Visitors required 3 things locals never spoke aloud: a left-handed shadow, blood that hadn't he forgotten the old mountains, and permission. Alara only possessed 2. She adjusted the strap of Lily's pink backpack, dotted with cartoon owls, bought at a suburban Target, and tried not to think about the stories. They leave toys at the stone cross every autumn. Gran used to whisper, knotting Alara's hair into braids tight enough to hurt. Not for the dead. For what takes the dead? The first cottage appeared, as though spat from the forest, maw. Timber walls slumped under beards of lichen. Roof tiles glazed with emerald moss. A woman in a moth-eaten shawl watched from her window. Eyes reflecting the dim light like those of a fox caught mid-hunt. Mama, Lily whispered, sticky fingers clutching Alara's hand. That lady's crying black. Alara didn't he look. She recognized the stench, curling through the air wood smoke, undercut with something sweetly rotten. The signature perfume of her childhood. The village square opened before them, its cobblestones gleaming with unnatural dampness. A dozen faces turned in unison, their pallor tinged gray as week-old bruises. Mayor Varga's office smelled of pickled desperation and mildew. His fingers, brittle as dried twigs, tapped the ledger open to her family's page. 20 years since any Cov CS breathed our air. Your grandmother's cottage. He sucked teeth, blackened by walnut husk dye. Needs tending. Alara kept Lily close. We LL manage. The child's father, gone. Varga's smile, exposed, gums the color of raw liver. Ull want to visit the cross before dusk. Fresh offerings calm the roots. The stone cross where they leave toys, Alara thought, stomach clenching, where they left Tomas' wooden soldier. The weak, the earth swallowed him whole. We don't practice superstitions, she said. Silence pooled thick as tar. Somewhere in the square, a goat screamed. Gran's cottage, huddled at the forest's bleeding edge. Lily chased fireflies, while Alara wrestled the door open. Rot plumed outward, not the expected decay of abandonment, but the cloying stench of something that had died standing up. The walls were alive, not a metaphor. Veiny tendrils pulsed beneath the plaster, converging on the hearth where Gran's chair sat facing ashes, 40 years cold. Mama. Lily's shriek tore through the twilight. Alara crashed through brambles, throat shredding on her daughter's name. She found Lily kneeling by a brook, perfectly intact, cupping a handful of water that dribbled black between her fingers. The lady wants to play, Lily said, pointing at the opposite bank where only shadows stirred. That night, Alara dreamed of roots. They slid through keyholes in thick gelatinous ropes, questing across floorboards toward Lily's bed. Her daughter sat up, eyes milky as quartz veins, and opened her mouth in a silent O. The roots plunged inside when Alara tried to scream. Her lungs filled with loam. She woke to an empty bed. Lily. The front door stood open. Moonlight painted the forest in shades of bone and arterial red. Alara followed small footprints into the trees, her pulse a war drum in her ears. The prints deepened, toes dragging as if something heavy pulled from behind. She found them at the stone cross, not a Christian symbol, but something older twin megaliths intersecting at a cruel angle, their surfaces scarred with markings that squirmed under direct sight. Lily's pajamas glowed ghost pale against the monoliths. She was whole. She was smiling. My friend says you have to leave the good crayons. Lily chirped, arranging sticks in a spiral pattern. The red ones taste best. Alara's flashlight beam quivered across symbols, carved into nearby trees the same spirals, the same jagged runes from her dream. We were going home, but the roots are hungry, Lily said, perfectly reasonable. They've been waiting since Uncle Tomas stopped coming. The air left Alara's lungs. Tomas had been 7 when he vanished. She'd been 4, clutching his left shoe as search parties combed the woods. They found the shoe, the toy soldier, never the body. Now, Lily. Her daughter sighed with the weariness of middle-aged women as they left. Alara glimpsed movement in her peripheral vision, a figure tall and wrong. joints bending backward as it stepped behind a tree. Mayor Varga came at dawn. Your child went to the cross. Alara blocked the doorway. We refine. Fool. Spittle clung to his chin. The hollow one marked her. The roots know her scent now. He thrust a burlap sack at her chest. Inside clattered a tin whistle. A doll with yarn hair. A silver rattle blackened by age. Take these. Take her. Beg. Alara threw the sack into the mud. We were leaving tomorrow. Laughter barked from Varga's throat. No one leaves once the roots wake. That afternoon, while Alara nailed boards over the swollen walls, Lily drew pictures, always the same scene. A tall stick figure with branches for hands, surrounded by kneeling children whose faces were scribbled out. When asked about playmates, Lily said, "The old ones hide under the floor. They sing through my teeth. The first rock came at dusk. It shattered the kitchen window. Scattering shards over the soup, Alara had pretended to eat. The second rock followed, then a rotten turnip, then a chorus of shrieks. Whore of the outside. Burned the offerings. She call it up again. Alara peered through splintered wood. Torches swarmed the square, their flames reeking of animal fat. Villagers' faces contorted in the hellish light. Mouths unhinged as serpents. Salt the doors. Someone howled. Drown the child. Alara grabbed the fire poker. Lily sat cross-legged on her bed, humming and tearing a stuffed bear seams. Time to go, sweetheart. Lily held up the bear innards, not polyester fluff, but matted fur clumped with leaf rot. He likes me better now. They fled through the root cellar. Alara's phone had died 2 days earlier. The charger lost somewhere on the bus ride from Budapest. The forest at night breathed like a living thing. Branches clawing at their hair. Lily giggled, trailing her fingers along tree trunks that shuddered at her touch. This way. She pulled toward a path Alara didn't he recognize. No, the road the roots want to show you something. Alara's grip tightened. Lily's wrist felt fibrous. When the flashlight caught her daughter's eyes, the pupils seemed split by tiny fissures. They emerged in a clearing that stank of turned earth and copper. The stone cross loomed ahead, now flanked by figures that flickered between corporeal and shadow. Children, dozens of them, some in modern jeans, others in woolens from another century, all translucent, all staring. Tomas stood frontmost. He looked 7. Still in the red sweater, he de-worn the day he vanished. Moss grew through his chest. His smile revealed teeth like splintered granite. Sister, his voice buzzed with flies. You brought us a new friend. Lily waved. Hi, Uncle Tomas. Alara's legs gave out. The earth felt warm, alive. Eerie supposed to be fed. Tomas drifted closer. The roots sustain us. The roots are us. But your daughter, his hand cold. Solid cupped Alara s chin. Hasn't he paid her tithe? The ground erupted. Not roots, but something slicker, darker, surging upward in a glistening column. It resolved into a humanoid shape, 7 feet tall. Skin like petrified bark. Face a hollow where shadows congealed. The hollow one. Its breath smelled of opened graves. Feed it intoned, not through air, but through Alara s bones. The bargain stands. Tomas stroked Lily S. hair. She leaned into the touch. Her own curls sprouting yellow fungus. One child every generation, he crooned. To walk the root roads. To feed the heart beneath the stones. Alara lunged. Her hands passed through Tomas, grabbing only cold mist. The hollow 1S laughter shook the trees. Take me, Alara screamed. I am blood. I am willing. The hollow 1S head tilted. You are not innocent. Lily stepped forward, eyes fully black now. ILL go, Mama. No, it doesn't hurt. Uncle says it s, like falling asleep in the dirt. Her small fingers brushed the hollow 1S talons. And LL get to play forever. Alara woke alone. They found her at dawn, clawing at the stone cross with bloodied fingernails. Mayor Varga S. men dragged her back to the village, where she raved about faces in the trees and singing stones. When they pried open her fist, she held a single scrap of fabric, the remains of Lily S. owl backpack, crusted with soil that wept slow black tears. The villagers resumed their offerings that autumn. Alara sits in Gran S. cottage still, watching the walls throb. Sometimes, when the moon swells, a child's laughter filters through the cracks. She begun leaving gifts by the hearth. Crayons, hair ribbons, a tin whistle. The roots beneath the floorboards coil around them, tender as lovers, deep in the forest. If you know where to look, there's a new figure among the stone cross ghosts. She holds hands with a boy in a red sweater, and a man whose face is a void. Their laughter smells of turned earth and forgotten birthdays. They re always waiting. They re always hungry. Story 3. The walls breathed. Mara pressed her palm flat against the flowered wallpaper of her childhood bedroom, feeling the slow expansion beneath the vinyl. A wet, organic sigh whispered through the floor vents as the house settled. Except houses didn't settle like this, with the moist exhalation of something alive. She'd forgotten the particular scent of this place. Mildew and rosewater, with an undertone of meat left too long in the sun. Her mother's funeral had been that morning. The casket lowered into red Georgia clay, while heat lightning pulsed behind the pines. Now Mara stood alone in the suffocating silence of the Victorian S second floor. Suitcase abandoned by the door. Every window was nailed shut behind yellowed lace curtains. Though the Realtor S listing had claimed the property was move-in ready, she de-lied about other things too. The dark stains blooming across the ceiling guarantee water damage. The first night, Mara dreamed of teeth. They emerged from the bathroom mirror. As she brushed her teeth, tiny incisors pushing through glass like milkweed pods splitting open. She woke gagging on the taste of pennies. Her own fingers probing gums that ached as if she'd been chewing stones. When she flicked on the bedside lamp, the wallpaper patterns writhed for a heartbeat before stilling. Grief does strange things, said Mrs. Driscoll from the porch swing the next day. The elderly neighbor had brought a casserole dish exuding odors that made Mara S. empty stomach clench. Your mama, she changed after your daddy passed. Started keeping odd hours. Told me she could hear the house growing new rooms at night. Mara stared at the casserole S congealed surface. Fat bubbles burst sluggishly between tater tots. She never mentioned that in our calls. Did you ever ask? Mrs. Driscoll S. milky eyes tracked something over Mara S. shoulder. When she turned, only the foyer stared back grandfather clock stopped at 3:07. Umbrella stand brimming with blackened dandelions. Funny thing about old homes. They remember who belongs to them. That evening, Mara found the crawlspace. It wasn't tea on the blueprints. The Realtor S paperwork showed nothing but solid foundation beneath the house. But there it gaped when she moved the threadbare parlor rug. A square hatch warped with age. Iron ring green with patina. The smell rose first. Wet earth and kerosene, undercut by something sweetly feckle. Her phone flashlight revealed rough-hewn stairs, plunging into darkness. The 7th step creaked, not wood on wood, but the high keen of something organic flexing. Mara S. light caught the walls ribbed and glistening, pulsing gently. She told herself it was tree roots pressing through clay. Told herself the warm droplets hitting her neck were groundwater. At the bottom stretched a hallway. Impossible. The dimensions defied the house. Above vaulted ceilings, supported by knobby columns that branched like petrified trees. Archways lined both sides, hung with curtains of thick mucus strands. Her beam illuminated something written on the nearest wall in jagged charcoal letters. She cuts herself open to see IF her insides. Still work, Mara ran. The stairs felt softer on the ascent, each tread yielding like cartilage. She bolted the parlor hatch and dragged an armchair over it, chest heaving, through the lace curtains. The setting sun painted the room arterial red. The teeth returned at midnight. They demultiplied. Molars now crowded the mirror-S surface, grinding against the glass in a chalky staccato. Mara pressed her back to the bathroom door. As the medicine cabinet rattled, something tapped the window above the tub, long fingernails on fogged glass. Though her room was on the second floor, when she closed her eyes, the dream came sharp and bright. Mother at the kitchen table, skin translucent as wax paper. Her hands dissect a fetal pig from Mara's high school biology class. But the specimen squirms and mules. They want us to make more rooms, Mother says, pulling a glistening intestine, taut like surveyor-S string. Dawn tea, you hear them chewing. Mara woke, vomiting into the umbrella stand. The dandelions lapped at it hungrily. Mrs. Driscoll was waiting on the porch at dawn. She didn't swing anymore. Her house dress clung to stick-thin legs, soaked from hips down. Your Mama-S roses are coming in, she said, pointing at the overgrown garden. The rose bushes had erupted overnight. Fist-sized blooms throbbed vermilion in the morning light, petals velvety and labial. Mara crouched to touch one. It contracted around her finger with a wet smack, thorns pricking blood. They read beautiful, Mrs. Driscoll breathed. Her teeth looked sharper than yesterday, just like her. The crawlspace hatch was open. Mara knew. She hadn't moved the armchair, knew the whimpers rising from below, weren't tea pipes or rats. Her phone died as she descended, plunging her into a blackness that pressed against her eyes like thumbs. The hallway had changed. Archway curtains now hung parted, revealing cells barely large enough for a crouching figure. Her trailing fingers found objects on the wall's baby shoes, lockets, a wedding ring etched with initials she recognized. Mother-S first engagement ring, lost years before Dad died. The whimpers crystallized into words. Wrong feeder, wrong feeder, wrong feeder, Mara. S outstretched hand met flesh. Cold, corpse gold, and hanging slack from the ceiling. She traced up the leg denim. Work boot, belt buckle shaped like a Texas Longhorn. Recognition detonated in her gut, an instant before her other hand found the face. Dad-S beard, Dad-S crooked nose, Dad-S empty eye sockets crawling with beetles. Not real, Mara chanted, backpedaling. Chemicals in the air, carbon monoxide, grief hallucinations. A match flared ahead. Mother stood in the hallway, holding a kerosene lantern. Wearing the peach nightgown she deep and buried in. Dirt clumped her silver hair. Behind her, the walls bled a slow amber pus that sizzled where it dripped onto the lantern glass. You shouldn't be down here yet. Her voice buzzed, with flies caught in her throat. The house isn't finished with you. Mara-S scream came out silent. Her tongue fused to the roof of her mouth. Mother tilted her head a bird-like jerk and raised the lantern. The hallway S end came into view. A great chamber yawned. Walls veined with throbbing capillaries that converged on a central mass. It might have been a heart once, but now it was a tumorous hive of doors, tiny attic hatches and cellar entries, and grand double doors oozing red lacquer. Each bore a nameplate. Mara S. legs carried her forward, despite the animal terror shrieking in her skull. Alina Driscoll, 1902 to 1931, Margaret Henley, 1932 to 1955. Leila Carmichael, 1956 to 1988. Mother S. cold hand settled on her shoulder. Feeder becomes the feast. The house always chooses daughters. The newest door glistened, fresh sap, bleeding from its pine planks. The nameplate gleamed. Mara Henley, 1994, no. Mara turned to see beetles spilling from Dad S. grinning mouth. This isn't real. Mother S. nails dug into her collarbone. You stopped answering my calls. Stopped visiting. The house got so hungry, while I was keeping your room warm. Her free hand plunged into the tumorous wall and pulled. Flesh tore like wet paper, revealing a bedroom frozen in 2008. Hannah Montana posters, stuffed unicorns, a twin bed, where something with too many joints crouched facing the corner. They need a new feeder, Mother whispered. Mara woke, screaming in her childhood bed. Dawn bled through the curtains. Her suitcase sat unpacked by the door. Mrs. Driscoll S. casserole waited on the kitchen counter, stone cold. The crawlspace hatch was securely bolted beneath the rug. She spent the day scrubbing the bathroom mirror until her reflection stopped smiling. With slightly too many teeth, rational explanations blossomed like the throbbing roses outside sleep deprivation. Unresolved trauma. The gas leak she probably missed. By sunset, she almost believed them. The grandfather clock chimed 3:07 as she climbed the stairs. Her bedroom door was ajar. Mara froze on the threshold. The scent hit first coppery and sweet. The butcher shop reek of offal. Her phone trembled in her hand as the flashlight illuminated the walls. They were bare. No floral paper, no pulsing vinyl, just raw meat stretched taut over joists. Quivering as capillaries squirmed beneath marbled fat. The ceiling dripped. Something crouched on her bed, a hairless thing with jointed legs folded insectile. Mother S. face stretched over a skull too elongated. SHHH. It raised a finger tipped with Dad S. wedding ring. The house is almost ready. Mara S. retreating foot broke through a floorboard. Tendrils erupted, winding up her calf. She fell screaming as the meat walls rippled. Archways forming like hungry mouths. The last thing she saw before the house swallowed her whole was the crawlspace hatch swinging open, always open now. Mrs. Driscoll brings a new casserole the next morning. She hums as she arranges roses in the umbrella stand. Such vibrant blooms this year. Upstairs, the bedroom walls have never looked fresher. The realtor will be pleased. The housing market adores historic homes with character. If you listen closely during quiet hours, you can hear the soft click of chitinous legs behind the baseboards. If you stand very still in the garden, you might feel the ground breathe beneath your feet. And if you ever find yourself touring a charming Victorian with strangely warm floors, pay no mind to the sweet smell beneath the roses. Some houses grow, some families root. Mara is learning to feed. Story 4. The static began on a Thursday. Dr. Eleanor Vance noticed it first in the radio telescope. Arrays faint pops and hisses, disrupting the cosmic microwave background readings. Her team at the Black Mesa Array had been mapping gravitational lensing anomalies when the interference started. By Friday, it had spread to every monitoring station. A persistent white noise that made the veteran astrophysicist think of cockroaches scuttling behind wallpaper. Signals coming from everywhere and nowhere, said Priya Sharma, their instrumentation specialist. Her fingers danced across 3 keyboards at once, like the universe itself is. Humming off-key Eleanor leaned over the humming servers, smelling ozone and the stale coffee stagnating in Priya's forgotten mug. The main screen displayed a false color rendering of the anomaly, a bruise-colored blotch in the Virgo supercluster, where no known celestial objects resided. The static intensified as she stared, resolving into something that prickled the hairs on her neck. Play the audio. She said what poured from the speakers wasn't sound. Not exactly. The lab's air grew thick and syrupy, pressing against eardrums and eye sockets. Marcus Reed, their visiting philosopher of science, vomited quietly into a wastebasket. Eleanor's vision doubled as her hindbrain screamed that this waveform wasn't meant for biological processors. Then came the numbers. 8, 4, 22, 17, 36. Priya read aloud from her scrolling terminal, voice trembling, repeating every 12 minutes. Coordinates. Marcus wiped his mouth. Prime numbers. Fibonacci sequence. Pi. His usual smug detachment had cracked like an eggshell. Eleanor's palms left damp prints on the desk. She recognized the cadence from her father's disappearance 30 years prior. The same pattern he'd scribbled in blood on his observatory walls before vanishing during a routine lunar eclipse survey. The memory arrived sharp and sudden, a fishhook in gray matter. We need to point everything there, she said, stabbing a finger at the blotch on the screen. Every scope, every satellite, every Aliner. Marcus gripped her forearm. His hand felt corpse gold. Your nose is bleeding, they found the coordinates matched a patch of void between NGC 4874 and IC 837, a region so empty it made astronomers nervous. The Hubble's replacement, the Lovelace array, revealed nothing but perfect blackness. No stars, no galaxies, not even the faint glow of intergalactic dust. Then on Sunday, the blackness blinked, like a shutter opening. Priya whispered during the emergency briefing. Her left eye wouldn't stop twitching. Something looked at us. Marcus played the enhanced footage. Aliner watched the starfield vanish, as if God had dragged a knife across the sky, leaving a perfect rectangle of nothingness. For 3 heartbeats, it persisted. When light returned, the constellations had shifted, not by much, just enough that her brain itched, trying to reconcile old patterns with new configurations. The static changed, Priya said. She queued up an audio file. Aliner heard it immediately, a new rhythm beneath the numbers. Slower, deeper, hungrier. Her molars ached. Decoding now, Priya continued. Its instructions, the document, printed itself on thermal paper over the next hour. Line by agonizing line. Equations that hurt to look at. Schematics for a device, using quantum tunneling principles to pierce the membrane. A materials list, including elements that didn't appear on any periodic table. And at the bottom, a single sentence in her father's handwriting. They let me see the stitches. Marcus refused to participate. This is how every Lovecraft story starts, he snapped, pacing the lab's flickering fluorescence. We're the idiots who keep poking the sleeping bear with a stick butt. Aliner had already called in favors. By dawn, military contractors delivered a crate of exotic matter stolen from a collider in Switzerland. By noon, they'd built the device, a barbed thing of silver alloy and shimmering black crystals that seemed to drink the light. It looked less like technology and more like the fossilized claw of some prehistoric beast. They activated it at 3:33 am local time. The lab's walls groaned like a stepped-on stomach. Shadows pooled around the machine, thickening into a vertical smear of darkness that smelled of burnt hair and loneliness. Through it, Aliner glimpsed not a place, but the absence of place. Not a being, but the concept of being inverted. Something moved there. Or perhaps the movement itself was the entity. Her optic nerves sizzled. Priya screamed words that hadn't existed before that moment. Marcus simply sat down. and began plucking out his eyelashes one by one. Aliner stepped through the shapeless, greeted her without mouths. Their communication bypassed language, etching directly into her neurons. She saw the truth of it, the universe, as a soap bubble clinging to a greater structure. Reality's laws mere local ordinances. The cosmic microwave background wasn't remnant radiation from the Big Bang, but the still warm corpse of whatever their experiment had just murdered. Life existed only in the narrow band between combustion and entropy, where the larger things couldn't see them. Until now, you rang the dinner bell. The not voice intoned with a mixture of amusement and infinite weariness. The black frequency was quarantine. Memories, not her own, flooded Aliner's mind. She saw civilizations that had glimpsed behind the curtained silicon forests that petrified themselves to escape notice. Gas giant dwellers who sang themselves into supernova, a species of light-based beings who committed suicide by blue shift. Her father appeared among them, eyes replaced with pulsars, screaming through 100 event. Horizons, the revelation broke something fundamental in her. Gravity stopped working properly within 3 meters of her body. Priya found her crawling from the portal hours later. Fingers worn to bone from clawing at non-Euclidean angles. The device had collapsed into a singular point of regret that wept oily tears. "It's coming," Aliner rasped. Her tongue had grown translucent. The hungry part. The part that wasn't supposed to know about us. They tried to destroy the data. Deleted servers, burned notebooks, microwaved hard drives. But the numbers kept appearing in the static between TV channels, in the pattern of rain on windows, in the arrhythmias of ICU patients across 3 time zones. Marcus hung himself with a power cable, but his corpse kept whispering coordinates. Priya melted her own hands with acid, yet her stumps kept typing manifests for impossible elements. Aliner sits now in what used to be her office. The walls breathe. The air tastes of forgotten birthdays. Her eyes have migrated to new locations that geometry cannot describe. When the government men come with their guns and flashlights, she tries to warn them about the cracks spreading through causality, about the awful convenience of human neurology being exactly the right shape to receive the signal. They shoot her 6 times before noticing she stopped needing lungs yesterday outside. The stars wink out one by one, not vanishing, rotating away, as if something vast is turning its headless static, never stopped. If you listen closely right now, beneath the white noise of your devices, you can hear it too. The numbers, the coordinates, the invitation. They let us see the stitches, but the needle is still moving. Story 5. The walls breathed when Clara wasn't looking. She decatched the movement in her periphery wallpaper, seams rippling like gills. Baseboards contracting with wet clicks. But when she turned her head, the old Victorian house held perfectly still. Her therapist called it grief, manifesting as dissociation. Her boyfriend, Jamie, said the place just needed better insulation. Clara stopped mentioning the size in the heating vents. After she found him Googling early onset schizophrenia on his phone, she moved into her childhood home 3 months after Elise S. funeral. The realtor said it was a gesture of healing. The truth squirmed in Clara S. gut whenever she signed another rent check. She needed to prove the house hadn't killed her sister. The first photograph appeared on the mantel the morning of the first frost. Clara stared at the silver frame, her coffee cooling between her palms. It showed 7-year-old Elise standing in front of the house's stained glass front door. Her left hand blurred as if she'd been waving. Clara's own childhood bedroom had been painted over 6 times, but she remembered the sticky residue on that frame's back, the way their mother had pried it from Elise's rigid fingers in the ambulance. "You're not real," Clara told the photograph. Her breath didn't fog the glass. Elise's reflection smiled back from the window behind the mantel. Jamie found her digging through the attic at 3 a.m., a headlamp slicing through dust. "It's not here," Clara whispered, tossing aside a box of their mother's porcelain dolls. Their glass eyes clicked as they rolled across the floorboards. The blue diary, with the lock shaped like a star Elise wrote in it every night. "I need to see Clara." Jamie gripped her wrists. His palms felt gelatinous, seeping between her fingers. "Your sister didn't keep a diary?" She wrenched free. The beam of her headlamp caught the dolls' faces. All their painted smiles had cracked. The house began peeling, not the wallpaper, the space. Clara would open the linen closet and find the shelves stacked with Elise's childhood sweaters, the wool still damp from the river. By the time she fetched her phone to take a picture, the closet would be full of yellowing towels again, her camera roll filled with half-proofs. A shadow pooling too thickly in the corner, the bathroom mirror reflecting a hallway that didn't exist. A streak of river algae on her pillow. She stopped answering Jamie's calls. He started leaving casseroles on the porch. The foil lids marked with smiley faces in Sharpie. Clara threw them in the freezer, where the frost grew black hairs. The walls started singing. It wasn't the pipes. Clara pressed her ear to the floral wallpaper in the foyer and felt the vibration in her molars, a hymn their grandmother used to hum while shelling peas. Where the water dawn't reach, the roots grow sweet, the lyrics curdled when she tried to sing along. she dreamt of Elise standing in her bedroom doorway, dripping. "You shouldn't he have come back," Elise said, her voice the gurgle of a clogged drain. "They re hungry because you remember." Clara woke to the taste of peat and iron. 4 crescent moons of mud stained her sheets. The exterminator found the hole in the basement. "Raccoons," he said, shining his flashlight into the jagged opening beneath the stairs. The beam dissolved into darkness. Funny looks deeper than the foundation. Clara waited until his truck left before crouching in front of the hole. Cold air whispered up, carrying the scent of wet fur and the sweet trot of marigolds. Something shifted in the blackness, a wet crunch like teeth parting. She stuffed the hole with concrete mix. The bag hissed as she poured it. Elise's diary appeared in the silver frame. Clara found it propped against the freezer's humming bulk. Its pages warped from water. The entries started on Clara's 10th birthday. June 14th, she's finally mine. Cut a lock of her hair while she slept. Fed it to the crack under the pantry door, like you showed me. The voice says we have to share everything now. August 23rd. She won T-stop screaming about the faces in the walls. I told her they read just the roots. They only want what we don't need anymore. September 1st. The voice says it's time. ILL let her push me. The roots need something sweet to grow. Clara's hands shook. She remembered the argument on the bridge. Elise's wild eyes. Her own hands slamming into her sister's chest. The way Elise's smile had widened as she fell. The freezer shuddered. Black frost cascaded onto the floor. Jamie came uninvited. Clara watched from the upstairs window as he pounded on the door. His Prius idling in the driveway. "You're not real," she whispered. His face melted like wax when he looked up at her. The house groaned. Floorboards splintered behind her. Clara turned. The hallway stretched twice, as long as it had yesterday. Wallpaper hung in tattered strips, revealing pulsating wood beneath. Something moved in the newly grown shadows, not the darting shape of mice, but the slow, sinuous drag of roots through soil. The stained glass door shimmered at the end of the hall. Elise's favorite colors, cobalt and poison green, blurred into the shape of a girl. They were almost here. Elise's voice sighed through the heating vent. You shouldn't he have remembered. The hole in the basement reopened. Clara descended at midnight, a flashlight in one hand and Elise's diary in the other. The concrete she depoured now formed a perfect ring around the opening, like a manhole. Cold air rose from the darkness, fluttering the diary's pages to September 1st. The roots need something sweet to grow. She lowered her legs into the void. The drop lasted seconds and hours. Clara landed in a cavern where the walls glistened with fibrous tendrils. They pulsed in time with her heartbeat. Elise stood by an underground river, her body woven from willow roots and riverweed. You fed me to them, she said, moss spilling from her mouth. But they want the firstborn. The tendrils stirred. Clara's flashlight died as the roots swarmed not around her, but through her. They pried memories from her marrow, stealing Elise's birthday necklace, whispering, "I wish you disappear the night before the bridge." The secret relief when the funeral director closed the casket. They've been in the walls since you were born. Elise laughed with a sound like snapping roots. Our family's been feeding them generations of guilt. Thought you could outrun your portion. The roots reached Clara's throat. She choked on the taste of peat and forgotten things. Clara woke in her bed. Jamie slept beside her, his face mercifully solid. Sunlight streamed through clean windows. Bad dream, he mumbled. She touched her neck. 4 faint scars circled it. Just memories. He kissed her forehead. His lips left a smear of black mold. When Clara went to wash it off, the bathroom mirror showed Elise's face beneath her own. The house serves tea every afternoon at 3. Clara sits in the parlor, while roots pour Earl Grey through her veins. Elise braids her hair with riverweed, humming the hymn about hungry roots. Jamie still brings casseroles. Clara lets him kiss her mold-soft mouth. "You seem better," he says. Clara smiles with Elise's lips. In the basement, the hole waits. It always does. Story 6. The keeper's pulse. The lighthouse stood alone on Blacktip Key. A splinter of granite clawing up from the Atlantic's gray belly. Clara's boots sank into the spongy peat path as she climbed, the salt wind peeling tears from her eyes. 3 weeks since the Coast Guard dropped her off. 2 since the radio died. She'd taken the keeper job for the silence. After the divorce, the clatter of subway brakes beneath her Brooklyn apartment had started feeling like teeth, grinding against her spine. But this silence was different, thick and velvety, interrupted only by the lighthouse's heartbeat. Every 45 seconds, the great lens above her head turned, its prisms slicing the fog into green shards that slid across her walls. Whoosh, click, whoosh, click, like a respirator keeping the island alive. The first irregularity was subtle. Clara found her coffee mug in the gear room, though she left it by the propane stove. The liquid inside had gone cold. A greasy rainbow film swirling on its surface. She poured it out the kitchen window and watched the black sand drink it down. Isolation plays tricks. She told the cracked bathroom mirror that evening. Her reflection seemed to mouth the words a half-second late. By day 3 of the radio's silence, the rhythm changed. The lens stuttered during its rotation, casting jagged shadows that made Clara's migraine bloom. She climbed the spiral stairs to the service room, fingers trailing over cold iron rivets. The smell hit her first hot oil, and something sweetly rotten. The gearbox was bleeding. Thick black fluid oozed from between the teeth of the main cog, pooling in the catch basin, meant for lubricant. Clara touched the sludge. It clung to her skin like congealing blood when she tried the manual override crank. Resistance shuddered up her arms. The mechanism gave a wet scream, then spun freely. That night, the light swept red. Clara stood at her bedroom window, watching crimson pulses roll across the midnight waves. The weather radio had crackled to life at sunset, spewing white noise that resolved into whispers when she pressed her ear to the speaker. Not the first keeper she ripped out the batteries. Now, watching the aberrant glow, Clara realized the light wasn't just stained it moved wrong. The beam quivered as it turned, trembling like a living thing. Shadows clung to its edges, darker than the surrounding night. Shapes that might have been fingers. The storm hit at 2:17 am. Clara woke to the tower, groaning like a stepped-on mast. Rain came horizontal, needling through cracks in the watchroom shutters. She fought her way upstairs. Seawater already ankle-deep and rising. The service room reeked of burning hair. The lens was still turning. Through its warped glass, Clara saw the storm wasn't the problem. Beyond the rain, beyond the thrashing pines onshore, something vast and low breached the waves. Not whale nor wreckage, but a blackness that drank the lighthouse S-pulse. The shadows in the beam stretched toward it, yearning. She wrenched the shutters closed. The thing outside made no sound, but the lighthouse answered walls humming, gears grinding out a fever rhythm. Clara S. fillings ached when she pressed her palm to the stones. The tower S pulse had quickened. Whoosh click, whoosh click. 50 seconds between rotations now. 40. By dawn, the storm had scoured the island clean. Clara S. emergency raft lay in tatters. Nylon skin peeled back in precise curls. The generator fuel was gone, though the lock on the storage shed remained intact. She ate cold beans straight from the can, watching tide pools through the kitchen window. They trembled with each step she took. The journal entries started appearing on her third day without sleep. Neat block letters in the margins of the Keeper S log, written in something that flaked rust red when she touched it. July 14. Provisions low. The light wants feeding. September 2. It showed me my mother S face in the lens. October 31. I will become the beat. Clara didn't recognize the handwriting. The previous keeper had vanished 6 months ago, leaving only a salt-stained uniform in the East dormitory. Search teams found his teeth wedged between rocks below the cliff. On the 5th night, the walls began to sweat. Clara woke, choking on the stench of low tide. Her bedroom walls glistened under the moonlight, oily droplets welling between stones. When she touched the ooze, it clung like spider silk, stretching into gossamer threads that vibrated with the tower S-pulse. Across the room, her shadow remained upright as she recoiled, a tall, thin silhouette with too many joints in its fingers. The whispers started at moonrise, not from the dead radio, but from the lighthouse itself, a wet, clicking speech that syncopated with the turning lens. Clara pressed her ear to different walls like a doctor, seeking a heartbeat. The voice came from everywhere, from the foundation stones, from the salt-crusted pipes, from the space between her molars when she clenched her jaw. Hungry, the lighthouse crooned as she tore through supply crates. Alone too long, she found the hatch on the 7th day, or it found her a square of floorboards in the gear room that hadn't been there before. Edges oozing fresh tar. The trapdoor opened onto a spiral staircase leading down through bedrock. The maps said, didn't he exist? Cold air rushed up, carrying the smell of her ex-husband S. cologne. Clara descended. The stairs ended in a cavern where the sea exhaled. Bioluminescent fungus painted the walls a sickly green. Before her lay the bones of a ship not wrecked, but grown, its timbers fused with the stone. Lanterns hung from its ribcage, each holding a curled photograph. Her childhood home, the Brooklyn subway platform, the divorce papers signed in blue ink. Something moved in the ship's shadow, a figure with Clara's face, but stretched, its limbs bending backward as it skittered across the ceiling. The thing's mouth unhinged like a snake S, emitting the lighthouse S wounded groan. We keep the beat. It rasped in Clara's voice. ULLB the new heart. She fled upward, the trapdoor slamming shut behind her. The service room walls were bleeding freely now. Black oil coursing down in rivulets that spelled words on the floor. Stay feed, become the lens above, gave a metallic shriek. Clara reached the watchroom as the mechanism failed completely. The great glass eye freezing mid-rotation. Out in the dark, waves churned around something rising. Granite cracked as the island itself began to sink. Clara understood now why keepers vanished. The lighthouse didn't warn ships it lured. Its pulse was a throat clearing before the feast. Every keeper's terror, their loneliness, their desperate journal entries, all fed the thing below until they became part of its hunger. She threw open the lens access hatch. Cold wind ripped at her hair as she climbed onto the narrow gallery. The ocean heaved below, but Clara kept her eyes on the horizon, where dawn bled red. The last log entry would be found months later, scrawled across a star chart in the watchroom. It in the rhythm of the light, in the spaces between heartbeats. I can feel my thoughts slowing to match its pulse. The thing from below is coming up the stairs. It wearing Mr. Porter S face, but it moves all wrong. I think the riding ends there. New keepers occasionally report strange phenomena coffee, left cooling in odd rooms. Shadows that lag half a second behind their owners. The light still turns, its pulse steady as a sleeping breath. Fishermen swear they sometimes see a woman's silhouette in the lens during storms. Her mouth open in a silent scream that harmonizes with the foghorn. And in certain tides, when the moon pulls just right, the island's black sand beaches cough up fresh teeth. Story 7. The Wi-Fi went out at 2:17 a.m. Elliot discovered this the way anyone would rolling over in bed to refresh Instagram. One last time before sleep, only to be greeted by that hollow white page with the spinning circle. He stared at the frozen screen until the numbers on his bedside clock flipped to 2:18. The apartment's ambient hum had changed. No refrigerator drone from the kitchen. No faint electronic whine from the gaming PC under his desk. Just the blood rush in his ears and the creak of floorboards settling. He sat up, the sheets sticking to his sweat-damp back. The smart bulb above his bed flickered once, twice, then died. Elliot's hand closed around his phone like a talisman. The glowing screen showed 1 bar of LTE. Alexa, turn on bedroom lights, he tried. Silence answered. The little blue ring on the device stayed dark. That's when the first notification chimed. Elliot nearly dropped his phone. The screen showed a push alert from an app. He didn't recognize a plain white icon with a black eye. The message read, "You should check the front door camera." His thumb hovered over the notification. The Nest cam feed usually loaded automatically. When motion was detected, he opened the app manually, watching the spinning wheel taunt him. Another chime. Same app. It's getting closer. Fucking glitch, Elliot muttered. He swung his legs over the bed, bare feet, recoiling from the sudden cold of the hardwood floor. The apartment felt different in the dark walls leaning closer. Shadows pooling thick where streetlight didn't reach. He kept his phone's flashlight off. Didn't want to see what the light might catch. The Nest cam feed loaded as he reached the living room. Grainy infrared footage showed his front door. And something else. A humanoid shape blurred at the edges, standing perfectly still in the hallway. Elliot leaned closer. The figure's head twitched upward, as if sensing his attention. His phone buzzed violently. "Look behind you," Elliot spun. The balcony slider behind him reflected his own pale face. The dim glow of his phone and nothing else. His racing mind tried to reassemble the shadows into familiar shapes: the couch, the TV stand, the potted fern his ex had left behind. A new notification. Just kidding. Check the bedroom. The laugh that escaped him sounded shrill, even to his own ears. "Fuck this," he said aloud, marching back toward the bedroom. Some hacker assholes having fun. Gonna pull the router, reboot the whole. He froze in the doorway. His laptop sat open on the desk, screen blazing with electric blue light. The cursor moved of its own accord, opening Finder windows faster than Elliot could process photos from his iCloud, his Google Drive, security footage from the building lobby. Files rearranged themselves into a collage of his life. His parents' home in Ohio, his college graduation, last month's Tinder date at that terrible taco place. The cursor stopped on a selfie. He'd taken that morning Elliot making coffee in his boxers. Sunlight streaming through the kitchen window. A red circle appeared around the upper corner of the photo. Zooming in, zooming further. There, in the reflection of the microwave door, a silhouette standing in the living room behind him. Tall, thin, head cocked at an unnatural angle. Elliot's breath fogged the air. The room temperature plummeted as he stared at the impossible image. He reached for the laptop, fingers trembling. The screen went black. Words appeared in crisp white text. "WEVE been trying to reach you about your cars. Extended warranty Elliot," barked a hysterical laugh. "Okay, very funny. Who is this? Jared." This your idea of his phone buzzed. The unknown app notification now showed a thumbnail of his laptop screen, him standing there in real time. Mouth open mid-sentence. The message below read, "Turn around slowly." Something creaked behind him. Elliot's bladder let go before his brain did. Warmth spread down his legs as he stood paralyzed, staring at the phone's screen. The camera view switched to his laptop's webcam feed. In the grainy footage, he saw himself from behind, and the thing standing inches away, gaunt limbs like twisted rebar, a head that kept tilting past human limits, fingers elongating toward his shoulder. He threw the phone. It shattered against the wall as he bolted, slipping in his own urine. The front door handle refused to turn smart lock dead. Manual override jammed. Elliot's screams echoed through the apartment as he rattled the unyielding metal. Behind him, the TV flickered to life with a burst of static. All screens in the apartment lit up simultaneously: phone, laptop, tablet, even the microwave display. The same phrase scrolling across every surface in jagged pixels. Let US, inlet US, inlet US in Elliot collapsed against the door. clutching his chest. His Apple Watch buzzed with a heart rate alert. 180 BPM. The glowing screen showed a new message where his fitness stats should be. Don't be afraid. We're already here. Something cold and sharp closed around his ankle. The last thing Elliot saw before the screens went dark was his own face staring back from every display, smiling, wider than any human mouth should stretch. 3 days later, the building super used his master key to open apartment 304. The stench hit him first spoiled milk and burnt hair. All the lights were out. Every device in the apartment had been destroyed, laptop screens smashed. Phone ground into plastic shards. Smart speakers reduced to piles of circuit boards and wires. In the bedroom, they found Elliot's body curled in the closet. His fingers were bone white from clutching a dead iPhone. The coroner noted cause of death as cardiac arrest, brought on by acute stress. No one mentioned the strange symbols scratched into the closet walls. No one commented on how all the surveillance footage from that night showed Elliot alone screaming at nothing, destroying his own possessions. Certainly no one discussed the brief flicker of interference in the building's security cameras at 3:03 am, when every screen in the lobby displayed a single word in bleeding pixels. Assimilated. You're reading this on a screen. Don't look, but there's something in the reflection behind you. It's learning to smile. Story 8. The walls breathed. Clara noticed it on her third night in the old Victorian. A subtle expansion and contraction beneath the peeling damask wallpaper. Like ribs under skin, she told herself it was the house settling, the way all old houses do. But when she pressed her palm to the floral pattern, she felt the warmth of something alive. She inherited the place from an aunt she barely remembered. A sharp-faced woman who sent Clara a porcelain doll every Christmas until she turned 13. The dolls had all arrived with their eyes gouged out. A shipping accident, her mother had said too quickly, as Clara peeled back layers of yellowed tissue paper to reveal hollow sockets. Now, standing in the foyer with her single suitcase, Clara wondered if the dolls were still here, watching her from some attic box with their sightless faces. The realtor S. Keys had come with a note. Don T. Go into the tower room after dark. Clara had laughed at that. The way you laugh at campfire stories when the sun is still up. But now, as twilight stained the parlor windows the color of dried blood, she found herself staring at the spiral staircase in the east wing, its iron steps coiled upward into shadows, the door at the top slightly ajar. It's just a room, she muttered. Running a hand through her choppy black hair, she decutted herself last week. scissors flashing in the motel bathroom mirror. The move had been sudden. The breakup messier. When the lawyer's letter arrived, she'd seen it as a sign. Start over. Mend the cracks in her life. But the air here tasted like tarnished silver. And every clock in the house was stuck at 3:07 a.m. She made tea in the clawfoot tub of a kitchen. The gas stove hissing like an angry cat. The silence was wrong. Not absence of sound, but something listening as she waited for the water to boil. Clara traced the scars on her left wrist, old friends, familiar ridges, and tried not to think about the way the shadows in the hallway seemed to congeal around door frames. The first scream came at midnight. Clara jolted awake on the velvet sofa, her mouth cottony from sleep. Moonlight streamed through the stained glass transom, fracturing the floor into panes of cobalt and sulfur yellow. For a moment, she thought she'd dreamed it, the high, wet sound of something in pain. But then it came again, closer, not from the tower, from the basement. She fumbled for her phone, but the screen stayed black, dead, despite being fully charged at bedtime. The house hummed around her, a subaural vibration that made her molars ache. When she stood, her bare feet stuck slightly to the floorboards, as if the wood had broken out in a fever sweat. The basement door stood open. It hadn't been open earlier. She'd checked every door, every window, the way you do in strange places. Now the darkness beyond the threshold yawned, exhaling a smell of turned earth and meat left to rot. Clara reached for the light switch. Click. Nothing. Her hand found the wall instead, fingertips brushing something lumpy and damp. She recoiled, but not before recognizing the texture, papier-mâché, like the dolls. The scream came again, now unmistakably human, a child's voice. Hello. Clara's own voice shattered the stillness, too loud. Is someone there? Silence. Then the creak of weight on stairs. She shouldn't go down. Every horror movie punchline screamed at her to turn around, flee. But the child's cry hooked into some raw place beneath her ribs. Maybe it was the neighbor's kid. Maybe they'd gotten trapped. Maybe. The first step groaned under her weight. The second split the silence with a crack like a shotgun. By the fifth, the darkness had swallowed her whole. Something brushed her ankle. Clara froze. The air thickened, pressing against her skin like a tongue. When she looked down, strands of hair course and white drifted across her feet. Not hers. She took another step. Her foot plunged into wetness. She stumbled back, gagging. The metallic tang of blood flooded her sinuses, and suddenly she knew the basement was flooded with it. A black lake lapping at the steps. But when she touched the liquid, Her fingers came away clear. Water. Just water. Stop it, she hissed. Her therapist's voice echoed in her head. Dissociation often manifests during stress, but the therapist, hadn't he heard the walls breathing? A slosh of movement below. Clara's phone chose that moment to flare to life in her pocket. Its flashlight beam slicing through the dark. She fumbled it out, hands shaking, and aimed the light downward. The basement was bone dry, except for the doll. It sat at the foot of the stairs, porcelain face tilted up, one remaining eye glinting cobalt under the light, ragged yarn hair, a gingham dressed dark with mold, and clutched in its tiny hands a human finger, fresh enough to glisten. Clara's throat closed. She took a step back, then another. But the doll's head turned to track her movement, not mechanically, the way a person turns, slowly, deliberately. Its chipped lips curved into a smile. She ran, up the stairs, through the kitchen, her socks slipping on the sweating floors. The basement door slammed behind her, with a sound like teeth snapping shut. Clara backed into the foyer, phone light darting across walls that now bled black fluid between the wallpaper seams. "You're not real," she whispered. Stress-induced psychosis. Sleep deprivation. Her wrist scars burned. The house answered with a wet, rippling sigh. She didn't sleep. By dawn, the walls had stilled. The floors dried to dusty oak. Clara sat at the kitchen table, with her knees drawn to her chest, watching sunlight filter through grimy windows. The rationalizations came easier in the light. Faulty wiring causing hallucinations. Carbon monoxide, a prank by locals who resented the city girl invading their decaying heirloom. But the tower door was still open. It called to her, not in a voice, but in the way her eyes kept drifting to that coiled staircase, in the itch between her shoulder blades when she turned away. Don T. go into the tower room after dark. But it was morning, now pale and anemic, but morning. The stairs spiraled tighter than they should. Iron balusters, cold under her palm. Clara counted steps 13, 26, 39. But the door never seemed to get closer, only when she closed her eyes, gripping the railing until her knuckles blanched. Did her foot finally meet level floor? The tower room was a reliquary of dolls, hundreds of them, stacked on sagging shelves, propped in cobwebbed corners, all missing their eyes, all dressed in moldering finery, and at the room's center, a walnut writing desk with a single sheet of paper. Clara's breath fogged in the sudden cold. The paper trembled as she picked it up, revealing elegant script beneath a watermark of wings. Dearest Clara, ULL forgive the dramatics, but some truths require ceremony. This house has waited for you. We all have. You see, the dolls were anti accidents. They were invitations. Every empty socket a door. Every severed thread a binding. You've been walking through our halls since the first gift, though you didn't know it. How do you think you survived the car crash, the overdose, the razor? We've been so hungry, Clara. But family takes care of its own. With love, Aunt Lydia. The floor dropped away. Clara gripped the desk. The wood now pulsing like a heartbeat. Memories flickered Christmas mornings, tearing paper to reveal blinded dolls. Her mother's too loud laugh. The way her father would leave the room whenever the packages arrived. And deeper, older memories. A baptism of black water. Small hands pressing something squirming into her chest. A lullaby in a language that cracked the air like ice. The dolls began to weep. It started as a whimper. A chorus of tiny voices swelling to a wail. Clara clapped her hands over her ears, but the sound drilled into her skull, vibrating behind her eyes. Porcelain cracked. One by one, the dolls turned their empty sockets toward her, jagged tears splitting their cheeks. Stop, she screamed. They obeyed. In the ringing silence, Clara became aware of the itch behind her own eyes. She stumbled to a tarnished mirror hanging between shelves. Her reflection stared back, pale but normal, until she leaned closer. There, in the dark of her pupil's movement, she pressed her face to the glass. Shapes writhed in the blackness, thin white filaments threading through her irises. As she watched, a tiny porcelain hand pressed against the inside of her cornea. Fingers splayed. The dolls' mouths opened in unison. Welcome home. The realtor found the suitcase by the door. Clothes neatly folded. Upstairs, the tower room stood empty save for a single doll on the desk. This one had Clara's face, her choppy hair, the scar on its wrist rendered in delicate pink thread. Its eyes were intact, vivid green, frozen mid-blink. In the basement, the walls glistened faintly, as if lined with saliva, and in every mirror in the house, something stirs if you watch too long. A flicker of movement behind your reflection, a smile, a handprint fogging the glass after you turn away. They say old homes have personality. This one is growing. Sleep well. Story 9. The stones wept. That was Alara's first thought when she stepped onto the island. A jagged tooth of black rock jutting from the North Atlantic. The lighthouse stood at its apex, its white paint peeled raw by decades of salt and spite. She'd taken the assignment for the silence. 2 months alone, charting the unnamed Isle's coastline. A cartographer's retreat after the ferryman had refused to We've come closer than half a mile. Tides LL chew your bones for the month S out. He muttered, pockets jingling with her extra payment. Day 1, the key left under the mat, turned twice before the door groaned open. Inside smelled of iodine and something sweetly rotten, like fruit left to blister in the sun. Alara traced a gloved finger along the spiral staircase iron steps, pocked with rust, each creak echoing up the tower S throat. The keeper S journal lay open on the desk. Last entry, dated October 31, 1987. They re-singing in the walls again. She laughed, a dry click in her throat. Solitude did things everyone knew. Her own ghosts were quieter these days. The phantom weight of a wedding ring she stopped twisting. The echo of a voice that no longer said be careful, but they still hummed beneath her sternum. By dusk, she unpacked her instruments. Theodolite maps, a brass telescope cold enough to sear skin. The first night S wind made the lighthouse tremble like a plucked string. Day 7, the tides changed. Alara noticed it during her morning shoreline trek. How the waves now recoiled from the eastern cliffs, as if scalded, leaving behind kelp that glistened unnaturally, like cartilage. Her compass spun lazy circles whenever she faced the lighthouse. Magnetic interference, she told the gulls, but her gloves kept finding new cracks in the rocks, fissures too straight to be natural. That evening, brewing tea on the propane stove, she heard it, a wet, rhythmic sound beneath the floorboards. Drip, slither, drip. Pipes, she announced to the empty galley. The word curdled in the air. Day 14, sleep became a currency she couldn't afford. Alara woke each night at 3:17 a.m., mouth cottoned, to the sound of something dragging itself up the stairs. Not the guttural thump of an animal, but a liquid, purposeful ascent. The sound of a soaked rug being hauled step by step. She barricaded the bedroom door with her trunk, took to keeping a kitchen knife wedged between her mattress and the wall. During daylight hours, she found strange tides pooling in her boots, lukewarm and reeking of low-tide decay. Her maps now bore angry red XS where landmarks should be been, as if the island itself were revising her work. Day 21. The storm hit at twilight. Alara huddled in the lantern room as waves clawed at the tower S base. The storm S howl threaded with something melodic, a choir of wet tongues fluttering against teeth. The glass panes shook. Through the maelstrom, she glimpsed shapes in the surf, elongated, jointless things that rode the waves like eels riding currents. Her radio spat static. Mayday, she whispered into the receiver, not knowing if the Ferryman S warning about the tides had been a threat or a prophecy. When the eye passed, she descended to find the lower chamber flooded with ankle-deep seawater. Floating in it were clumps of her own hair, dark and knotted with strands of silvery kelp. Day 28 the walls bled. Not blood, something thicker. A sap-like ooze that seeped between the stones. It gathered in corners, reflecting the lamplight in prismatic smears. Ilara followed the trails upward and found the source. A crack in the tower S crown, where the storm had split the mortar. Through it, she could see the moon or a moon, anyway, too large and too green. Its craters arranged in a pattern that made her retch. That night, the thing on the stairs reached her door. "I see you," she hissed, knife trembling. The dragging paused. A smell enveloped her brine and burnt hair, and the coppery tang of a newborn S crown. The door handle rattled. "Ilara," it wasn't a voice. It was the sound of water forced through a drowned lung. A vibration that bypassed the ears to coil directly in the brain. She stabbed through the wood. The blade sank into something spongy. A shriek tore through the lighthouse, shaking dust from the rafters. When she yanked the knife back, its edge was rimmed with a mucus-like film that pulsed faintly, alive. Day 35. The Journal S blank pages began to fill. Ilara found the first entry at dawn, in handwriting that mirrored her own. "It's easier if you don't fight. The teeth are kinder than the waiting." Subsequent pages detailed things she hadn't done, hadn't remembered doing. Nights spent walking the cliffs, murmuring to the waves. Mornings scrubbing black scales from the shower drain. She tore the pages out, fed them to the stove. They burned blue. Her reflection had grown unreliable. Sometimes her eyes were too wide, her mouth a lipless gash. Other times, the mirror stayed empty, even as she felt her own breath fogging the glass. She took to sketching her face daily, anchoring herself in pencil lines. The portraits accumulated on the walls. Each subtly altered a pupil slit, like a cat S. Earlobes fused to neck. Skin modeled as tide-worn stone. Day 42. The ferry wasn't coming. Ilara stood at the western cliff, flare gun heavy in her coat. The horizon stayed barren. Her supplies had spoiled canned goods bulging, with gaseous rot, water tasting of bile. She resorted to licking condensation from the walls. It left her tongue numb. At high tide, she found the alcove. The rocks parted like a stage curtain, revealing a cavern ribbed with bioluminescent moss. Inside, the skeletons sat in a circle, their bony fingers intertwined. Each wore a tattered Coast Guard uniform. The newest corpse still had milky eyes and a face frozen in a rictus grin. His name tag read J. Hargrove, 1987. Alara vomited salt water. Day 49. The lighthouse was hungry. She felt it in the floorboard's grip. How the wood seemed to suck at her soles as she paced. The ooze from the walls now formed viscous pools that whispered as she passed. Stay, stay, stay. Her maps were useless, the coastline shifting hourly. She started marking her skin instead, carving coordinates into her thighs with a sterilized knife. The wounds healed too fast, leaving silvery scars that itched. That night, the thing spoke again. Eerie almost ready. It gargled through the door. Alara pressed her ear to the wood and heard everything. The click-crack of expanding barnacles, the hiss of 1,000,000 shrimp teeth, the lonely, unending wail of the Mariana Trench. Day 56, the door opened. Alara, didn't he remember turning the handle? One moment, she was reciting pi to stave off madness. The next, she was face to face with the staircase. The dragging thing was gone, but its trail remained a glistening film that led downward. She followed, barefoot, the ooze warm between her toes. The basement wasn't tea on any blueprint. It sprawled beneath the lighthouse, a cathedral of dripping stone. Pillars of coral pulsed like organs. The floor undulated not water, but a membrane stretched taut over something vast. Alara knelt. Through the translucent surface, she saw lights moving in the depths, arranged in a spiral pattern that matched the lighthouse stairs, that matched her scarred thighs, that matched the thing growing behind her ribs. Home, sighed the membrane. Day 63, they find the lighthouse empty. The rescue crew notes the stench first, a reek of opened clams and electrical fires. No sign of the cartographer, though her equipment lies neatly arranged. The Journal S final entry, dated 2 days prior, reads, "The stones were never weeping. They were salivating. As they depart, one officer lingers, swearing he hears a woman's laugh echoing up the tower. When he investigates, he finds the basement door that shouldn't he exist. The wood warped into something resembling gills. The team leaves without him. Far below, the membrane quivers. Somewhere, a new stone juts from the sea." Story 10. The rain smelled like burnt hair as Clara stepped off the Greyhound. Blackfield's lone bus stop, crouched beneath a flickering street lamp. Its light reflecting oily rainbows in the puddles. She pulled her father's old army jacket tighter around herself, the wool still holding the faint scent of his lucky strikes after 12 years in a storage locker. The town beyond the sodium glow looked less like a place and more like a charcoal sketch of one shop's boarded up, church steeple leaning like a broken finger, streets empty, but for the wind carrying fast food wrappers In spirals her boots made wet suction noises as she walked past the shuttered movie theater where she'd gotten her first kiss. The marquee still advertising return of the Jedi. The house waited where Maple Street dead-ended into the woods, its gables sagging under ivy that seemed to pulse faintly in time with her headache. She'd forgotten how the trees pressed close here, how their branches tangled into a lattice that turned daylight into a green, submarine gloom. The key stuck in the lock. When the door finally gave, the smell hit her mildew and something meatier underneath. Her phone flashlight revealed furniture shrouded in yellowed sheets, dust motes swirling like plankton. The wallpaper bled sepia, stains in Rorschach patterns. Upstairs, her childhood bedroom window framed the asylum across the valley. Its broken windows staring back, she found the first journal in the attic, wedged between a rusted birdcage and a box of her mother's old nursing uniforms. October 12th, 1987, scrawled in her father's cramped handwriting. Third patient this month reported hearing the heartbeat. Wilkins claims it's coming from the walls. Ordered increased Haldol dosages. The next entry, paper felt brittle. November 1st, orderly found Wilkins in the east wing shower, skin removed with what appears to be surgical precision. No blood on scene. Staff reporting shadows moving against the light. Clara's fingers left sweat marks on the pages through the attic's circular window. The asylum's silhouette bled into the gathering dark. She counted 8 chimneys against the bruised sky. When she blinked, there were 9. Mia's diner hadn't changed, except for the cancer fundraising posters papered over the cracked vinyl booths. Clara's childhood friend stood behind the counter, polishing the same chrome coffee urn. Her auburn hair now streaked with gray. The bell jangled. Clara Beckett. Mia's smile didn't reach her eyes. Heard about your dad. The cancer, right? Pancreatic. Clara slid onto a stool. The formica felt sticky. They found his journals about the asylum. The rag in Mia's hand stilled. Behind her, the grill hissed. You shouldn't read old ghosts, Clara. Patients kept disappearing. My father covered it up. Why? Mia's reflection in the pie case glass rippled. For a heartbeat, her face seemed to melt like wax. Eyes pooling downward. Clara blinked. The fluorescent lights buzzed. This town, Mia turned. Face normal but pale. We take care of our own. Always have. Even when the state closed the hospital. Even when she bit the sentence off. The coffee tasted like soil. Through the diner's grease-smeared window, Clara watched Mr. Hendricks from the hardware store pace outside, his left leg dragging through a puddle that reflected not his face, but a dark, pulsing mass. The asylum S gates hung open. Chains rusted through. Clara S flashlight beam cut through the lobby S gloom, illuminating peeling murals of smiling nurses. The air tasted metallic, each breath coating her tongue. Somewhere above, water dripped in sync with her footsteps. Patient records moldered in the administration office. She flipped through brittle pages. Admission date 10/31/1985. Patient Alina Riggs. Diagnosis: schizoaffective disorder. Symptoms: claims the whole undertown speaks to her. A child S drawing fluttered from the file. Red crayon swirls depicting a black maw in the earth. Stick figures tumbling into its concentric rings. Scrawled beneath, it grows when you look. Her boot crunched glass in the east wing. The walls here blistered with black fungus that retreated from her light. Room 217. S door creaked. Inside, restraints hung from a bed frame, crusted with brown stains. The wall above the mattress bore hundreds of tally marks. The final cluster dug deep enough to expose plaster. Something shuffled in the corridor. Clara killed her light. The darkness pressed wet against her face. A wet smacking sound approached, accompanied by the smell of overripe pears. Her fingers found the Zippo in her pocket, its flame revealing nothing, but the floorboards ahead gleamed slick. Back in the lobby, her flashlight beam caught the mural S changed details. The nurses' smiles now stretched too wide, their eyes pits. Behind them, a dark spiral swallowed the painted sky. The whole appeared on her third night home. Clara woke to the sound of her own name, whispered through the heating vents. Moonlight bled through the bedroom window, illuminating a patch of floorboards that warped in concentric circles. The wood groaned as she approached, nails rising like splinters. When she pressed her palm to the rippling surface, it gave like skin over a heartbeat. She fled to the kitchen. The percolator shook as she poured coffee. Her reflection in the black window showed someone standing behind her, a tall silhouette with a head that brushed the ceiling. She spun. Empty room. But the window reflection now showed two figures. Three. A crowd of shadows congealing at the edges of the light. The hole in the bedroom had grown to 6 feet across. Floorboards peeled back like flower petals around a center that wasn't empty, but full a density that bent the light. Clara's ears popped. The air tasted like licking a battery. From the darkness below came a wet, rhythmic sound. Thump thump, thump thump. The house's foundation creaked. She ran. Mia's trailer smelled of cat urine and burnt sage. You shouldn't have gone there, she hissed, peering through many blinds. It knows when someone is looking. The patient's didn't tea disappear? Clara S. hands shook around her mug. The town sacrificed them. My father helped. Mia S. laugh came out jagged. Sacrificed. We fed it. The whole S always been here. The asylum just made it hungrier. She lit a cigarette with trembling hands. Your dad tried to seal it. Concrete. Holy water. Even dumped the cremated remains of her voice broke. Outside, a dog howled. Then another. The chorus built into a frenzy before cutting off abruptly. Mia crossed to a locked cabinet, withdrawing a VHS tape labeled Blackfield Centennial 1986. The footage showed Main Street decked in bunting. Children racing toward a ribbon-cutting ceremony. As the camera panned to the Asylum S entrance, static erupted. When the image cleared, the celebrating crowd stood frozen, faces blurred except for their screaming mouths. Behind them, the Asylum S shadow stretched impossibly long, terminating in a spiral that swallowed the horizon. Every Halloween, Mia whispered, we give it someone, keeps it quiet. Your dad refused last year. Then his diagnosis came. A car engine growled outside. Headlights swept the room. They came in hunting jackets, faces obscured by kerchiefs. Clara ran through backyards, past swing sets moving empty in the wind. The whole S-pull intensified near her house. Each step fought, as if wading through tar. Inside, the walls bled black ichor. The bedroom floor had become a gaping throat, edges lined with fibrous tendrils that pulsed. Thump thump. Her father's final journal lay open on the dresser. They were not hallucinations, she read. The whole shows you what's already there. The rot beneath, the faces in the walls. Mia hasn't aged because hands grabbed her. Mr. Hendrick's breath reeked of cloves as he tightened the rope. Nothing personal, Clara. Just gotta reset the clock. They dragged her toward the hole. The tendrils quivered. Below, things glistened. Clara's kicking foot connected with Mia's knee. The scream that followed sounded like two voices overlapping. She fell through rotted floorboards, landing in the Asylum's basement. Flesh-colored roots covered the walls, converging on a massive tumor suspended from the ceiling. It throbbed. Thump thump. Patient files floated in a pool of black fluid. Clara waded through the freezing muck, flashlight beam catching a nameplate. Doctor. Elias Voss, director. The tumor shuddered. A face pushed against its membrane her father's. Mouth open in a silent scream. Other faces followed. Patients. Orderlies. A younger Mia the roots lashed out. Clara's lighter touched the fluid. Flames erupted with a shriek that came from everywhere at once. Dawn found her kneeling in the ashes of her childhood home. The townspeople were gone. The asylum too, but the whole remained an absence that hurt to look at directly. Her father S. last journal entry flapped against a stone. It S. not under the town. The town is under it. In the puddle at her feet, Clara S. reflection stared back. From her left pupil, a tiny black spiral began to pulse. Thump thump, somewhere beneath the ruins. Something vast turned in its sleep.